Hello YouTube and Infinite Magicraid community. Gandolf here, bringing you to the top of Infinite Magicraid gameplay. So, welcome to the second part of the Fundamentals of PvP series. This is going to be continuing our discussion on key roles heroes need to fulfill in a PvP team. This knowledge will help you focus on the right heroes to build and what general stats to aim for on these particular heroes. And what we'll do for you is helping you figure out where to spend your resources. And right now, given the new global arena 5 versus 5 teams, you do need to have multiple heroes that cover the same role to have a good diverse composition to win your battles across all of the zones. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Making one minor addition to the last video. If you haven't checked out part 1, Lydia can be also used as a damage amplifier given she's going first, using skill 2 instead of skill 3. Skill 2 instead of ultimate. You at exclusive 2, not only do you gain the 40% attack up, you also increase 30% skill damage as well, which is very helpful for that early nuke setup. Now, it is an expensive option compared to many of the other ones that do a similar job, but the fact she goes first, it's a nice part, and it's a bit of added additional damage to your new combo as well. So without further ado, we're going to focus more on turn meter, control heroes, and buff removal heroes. So what these 3 different roles fulfill is allows you to really focus on going first, setting up for that one-shot KO wombo combo from your damage dealer and damage amplification combo. And if you haven't had a chance to watch the last video, basically there it's a long lengthy discussion around the pros and cons of each damage dealer and how damage amplification plus a damage dealer often outdo putting 2 damage dealer on the team. However, having 2 damage dealer on the team does give you some advantages as well when you're looking, especially against a team where they really focus on your single damage dealer. So for example, trying to counter something like Donald right now, which is showing up in the meta quite a bit. So Donald will lock out your highest attacking hero, which often is your damage dealer, which creates a little bit of problem for you. So having 2 damage dealer on the team is a potential option as well. So anyways, right into it. So across the turn meter section, you start out with space, which is the most common hero that everyone have. Early game, what you will see is the person has the faster space and the faster speed on the remaining heroes. Get off the turn meter boost, you're off to the races with the first turn. With the starting turn meter boost, it really is the key advantage to space being a key PvP hero. And at exclusive 3, that plus 30% becomes on turn meter instead of 20% for the entire team is a massive boost. Just to put things into perspective, at E0, if you have a team of all 2000 and your opponent is under 2500 speed, with the speed boost, your entire team will go before your enemy team. And once you're at exclusive 3 with that 30% boost, you're looking at a team of 2000 moving before a team of 2850 plus-ish speed, 2850-ish team. You'll still end up moving faster than that. So really, as long as your space can go at E3, your rest of your team is very likely to just go before the opponent, unless they also have a space or some sort of turn meter manipulation with a self turn meter boost as well. Next up, you have Popper, which is pretty much the newest addition to these type of hero, allowing you to secure the early first turn. At exclusive 3 is where you can push back the enemy turn meter, the entire team, by 24%. Now, Popper is really gaining a lot of popularity right now with the introduction of Lydia, because Lydia can imprison the rest of your team so they don't gain the turn meter boost from space if they're imprisoned, while Popper does the opposite. It pushes back your opponent's turn meter, therefore it's not really impacted by imprison, and his self gain is not stopped by imprison either. So we have to do a quick comparison between the effectiveness of turn meter gain and turn meter pushback on your opponent. Generally speaking, for the same value, turn meter gain is obviously a lot better. It just works out from math that way. I'll give one quick example. A 20% turn meter gain at 2000 speed makes it equivalent to someone who hasn't got turn meter gain for 2500. However, if you end up pushing your opponent back by 2400, by 20% attack bar, you can only beat someone who is under 2400 speed instead of 2500 speed, as opposed to the 20% speed gain. We will go into in-depth video around speed tuning and how to calculate some of these things so you can get your team perfectly set up so that there's no way for them to be interrupted in your combo. And I'll explain further how to do some of these calculations. The other drawback of turn meter pushback is there is a talent in the talent tree that allows you to reduce the amount of turn meter reduction you get from your opponent, further reducing the effectiveness of turn meter reduction on your opponent's team. The other heroes list here basically provides an AoE, so AoE turn meter boost for your entire team, allowing your team to move forward. Not going to have to explain too much about it, but basically these are what I would call a second mover. So usually you initiate with something like a space, and then you follow up with some additional turn meter gain to make sure that you are able to get rest of your team to go before the enemy's team. So there are some specific calculations, but in general you want your second mover to be very quick as well to be able to keep up with your space and get enough turn meter boost to go in front of the opponent's space or popper if you manage to secure first turn already. Now looking forward a little bit, I want to draw some special attention to Snove here, because Snove here doesn't actually, one thing about her special is that she cannot be frozen at a certain exclusive point, and then she actually gains turn meter when she's actually infected with frozen, making her the perfect Nizelle counter, allowing her to get additional turn meter to jump ahead any other turn meter combo on your opponent's team with a Nizelle, allowing you to push back everybody on their team by 15% plus a 50% chance of doing a 40% slow to your opponent, really allowing you to effectively counter any Nizelles that you run into. The other one is Rian. So starting at E0, he does a 30% turn meter pushback. And then at E3, that increases to 40%, which is a massive amount. However, the drawback of Rian, same with Lila, both of them are defensive type heroes. And we talked earlier about when you're using a defensive or attack type hero compared to a support hero, it's harder to get their speed up there because they're missing the second speed boost you can get from the talent trees in the support trees. So you're going to be at max tree, you're going to be close to like 90, anywhere between 90 to 95 points in speed when you're using Rian or using Lila as the second mover on your team for turn meter manipulation. So that's something to keep in mind as you're building them. They really need a really good gear to be up there in speed. So these are all the turn meter manipulation heroes that can actually push or move the entire team. Then you got a couple here that focus on just one key hero. So both the Bunny and Whistler. Whistler is forced to be used on the highest attacking hero, while and is only available at E1, exclusive one. Bunny can be manually casted onto any hero, but normally on auto it will always target the highest attacking hero, something to keep in mind, and it's only available at E3. Whistler gives a 30% turn meter boost and Bunny gives 25%, often in combination with the 25 with the 30% from space at E3, it's enough to pretty much make any of your DPS go right away in this combination. Um, and we already talked about their amplification benefits already in the last video. Then we got some interesting heroes to the right, which just completely gives your heroes another turn. And there's two ways of using them. Bisodin's a very common one where we use it at very high speed, allowing any hero a really slow, so heavy, slow um, damage dealer. That's all focusing attack and crit damage to move and do massive amount of AoE. That's one way of using it. But the other way is also to make it one speed slower than your main DPS, allowing you to immediately take another turn right after it. So, and it has the cleanse ability. So one common use of Bisodin is to say use it with a hero that needs to move twice, and use it on a team that's likely you're going to be using to fight against Nizel. So your first AoE, say, let's just say we use Nita. Nita does ultimate and it's frozen by the enemy Nizel because it used the ultimate. Then you can use Bisodin to follow up and let Nita immediately get another turn and use skill 2, which is a decent amount of AoE damage to really finish off the opponent. So that's one way of using it. You can use this combo for any sort of setup. You can do it with Barry, skill 2, then into ultimate. You can do Anna, skill 2 for the pre-dot, and then you can use Bisodin to follow up with ultimate for 2 rounds of detonation instead of 1 round of detonation. So that's just an example. The same idea applies for focus as well. Um, and early game, you'll probably find Cthulhu and Ross very helpful. You probably wouldn't have the room for them on your team later on, but early on, if you want your main DPS to go twice and leverage both skill 2 and ultimate, they're great heroes, and you don't have to invest a lot into them because all you need to do is just stack all speed on there, and I'm pretty sure even at um, Ascended 1 allows you to have them being one speed slower or just slightly slower than your main DPS, allowing them to give the DPS the double turn. Um, so that's how you manipulate turns and really take advantage of that in your opening setup. Then you look at heroes that can control the opponent. Basically, you're effectively taking away the turn from the enemy. Now, heroes like Nizel and Lydia, Lydia now with Imprison, which really stopped the turn meter gain from the opponent. It's a okay way of control. Nizel is still the OG, the most effective way for first turn CC. Then you got Quinlan and Ascendel that both um, can gain a lot of turn meter to secure the first turn, and that allows you to land the freeze or the silence on the enemy. Now with Quinlan, what's important is to think about what speed you're going to leave it at. Depending on what tier in the arena you are, you basically want to make sure he is slower than most of the enemy to get the full 50% at exclusive 2. At higher level of gameplay, I always recommend to everyone to go around anywhere between 1800 to 1900 in speed is where you want to leave your Quinlan, and the rationale for that is because most of your opponents are going to be running heroes above the 1900 speed mark, because you would, in a PvE situation, in most of your dungeons, the final boss adds are going to be over 1900 speed once you start farming dungeons 30 plus. So it will be ideal to get all of your heroes to move before the ads, which really makes the boss stage annoying if you let them live without killing them straight up front. So that's why the rationale is around that 1800 to 1900 mark for Quillian to fully take advantage of the highest speed he can get while still keeping it slower than most of the all 5 of the enemy units. Sendo straight up use as fast as you can. But one key thing to remember about Sendo, a lot of people don't know, is you can really take advantage of her skill 2. Her skill 2 is a guaranteed silence, and it does not check for effective hit. So as long as the target can be silenced, you are guaranteed to silence it with Ascendo. Then you got Fiona, which is very interesting because when Fiona, um, when there's 6 heroes that got CC'd on either your opponent's team or your own team, she gains 25% turn meter. So for example, if you ascendo, you immediately trigger 5 silences, silence them one more time, that's 6, then Fiona gets a 25% turn meter. This is a special, this is at exclusive 2, allowing you to then go for the stun. When you have 2 CC on the opponent, it makes it really hard for them to cleanse it off with something like a Catherine. So the other one is to run with Nazil, where Nazil is going to do AoE freeze. The enemy, say, attacks you, that something's going to get frozen for sure. Then Fiona gets to go again. So, very good combo here with these heroes to quickly get triggered, get some additional turn meter, and then go for a secondary CC on the enemy target. Santa is great for a perma freeze combo if you can land Nazil and have Santa go right after. Um, that is a very nasty combo and leave things permanently frozen. Now, what's really interesting about Santa here is Santa's perma-freeze. So if you are hitting it on a frozen target, it does not check for effective hit at all to extend that freeze to 2 turns. So 2-turn freeze plus Santa giving at exclusive 2, basically you're constantly just freezing every other turn. Your skill 1 gives you a 40% speed boost. You're basically taking 1 turn for you're taking 2 turns for every one of your enemy's turn at that kind of speed differential. So basically, yeah, the enemy just completely screwed over in deep perma freeze, allowing you to slowly chip away at their team. Zara is another interesting pick. Zara has innate 50% effective resistance, allowing you, as long as she lives, she's probably not going to get CC, and allows her to CC back. And exclusive 3, she has ability with 50% chance of landing debuff that cannot be cleansed, which is um, quite quite potent. Um, and also the fact that she can land random debuffs on the enemy, sometimes that could work to your favor, and sometimes people really don't like that random RNG. I'll leave it to you to see if you prefer to use heroes like that. Allcaster is a nice CC option, and being a mythic, it's accessible for everyone. You can, and we talked about him in the last video about damage amplification from his skills to provide defense break 2 and tenacity down 2. So that really increases a lot of damage output for you, at the same time giving your entire team attack up too as well when you are at exclusive 2 for him. So a very solid hero um, that could also help you with control. Now just be mindful when you're hitting targets like Panda, because he lands both Horrify and a Freeze, it counts as 2 CCs. So it's going to boost Panda by 40% and rest of his team by 20% turn meter. So just be careful when you use Allcaster against Panda. In fact, in general, you just should avoid using controls at all when you're fighting Panda-based teams, because it just allow the enemy to get turn meter and cut you in between your combo. The next one we have is Ben Austin and Anton. Both serve very niche use cases in the control aspect. Anton is specifically good for countering Gilliman and Brynhild, and you will see it when Brynhild counters hits Anton, and it'll be stunned, and the stun cannot be cleansed, which is super useful because a Brynhild with Vampora constantly countering your every AoE, your team is going to get wiped real fast. And Gilliman, because you're stopping the attack right on the AoE component and not allowing the rest of the combo to fall through, which actually has a maximum of 1,760 multiplier for skill 2. 11 arcane shots is really going to hurt, and you get to mitigate all of that with Anton. Now, if you notice here, my Anton is at a level 106 because I'm focusing on his HP to be around 3,500. You really don't want high HP on Anton. That's why you really should not fully level him up. Yeah, you can't leave him too low, but usually I'll say anywhere between 300 to 400 HP is fine. Allowing, aiming for that 100k hit from your opponent to trigger it, but not but enough to survive a full counter attack. Um, from the enemy. Noting that in Guild Arena especially, you do get a massive HP boost in your tower, so that's why not fully leveling him up is wise. Similarly in all arena now with changes so that um, you get 40% damage reduction on all types of damage. Yeah, you really don't want your Anton to have too much HP. It defeats the purpose of using him. Finally, you have Ben Austin. Um, if you have very high effective hit, you can reliably land the double reset, which pushes the enemy's cooldown, increase their cooldown by 1, so they can't use their skills on first turn, which effectively is a very good CC. Um, the the effect hit requirement is pretty high. I would recommend anywhere between 100 to 120 if you want to reliably, reset their entire team. But really, Ben Austin, you want high speed on him for the joint attacks is in the cleanse. So, unless you have very good first aid set, I would just say focus on speed for him. Um, then that covers pretty much all of the control options. And then let's talk about buff removal and buff block. So this is really important, especially facing any panda-based team or teams that can quickly gain a lot of buff on them. So for example, Seth is a great example of a hero that gives you a lot of damage mitigation and has a shield immediately on turn 1. So you want to get rid of those shields and buffs. You don't want to be blasting through them, or um, you definitely want to make sure you do that before your main DPS goes. So in this case, I will recommend any support type base strippers, buff removal heroes as a priority, given that it's easier to get them to higher speed, giving you the flexibility for them to even perhaps move before your single target turn meter manipulator, or have them quickly follow your control hero without worrying about too much of a speed gap in between, so that it creates an opportunity window for the enemy to cut in between your team. So let's talk about some of the pros and cons of each of the hero. Gentleman doubles as a DPS hero, which is great. Uh, Elena actually has great shielding and healing capability, but the other one is the passive around increasing your team's critical damage and reducing your enemy's team's critical damage. So that's something people often forget about, exclusive to. Then you got Nikishima, which inflicts Horrify on the enemy at E3, which I actually don't like because that means it will give turn meter to the enemy panda starting at that point. Slacto is a great option. The downside, it's not as fast, but the upside is at exclusive 3, it does a lot of damage. So then with Slacto, what you could do is you could strip, and usually in a Nita mirror, your Nita is not going to kill the enemy Nita. So having Slacto being a solid DPS, you could strip, and then second round, use the ultimate to kill the Nita easily with Slacto. Brynhild is very similar. Brynhild is a force to reckon with on her own, but if you're desperate for a strip option, she is available to remove all buffs on enemy. Then you got these two other options. Mamook doesn't take away attribute debuff, so which is kind of annoying because you do want to strip the resist buff up from Panda exclusive 1 and higher, because otherwise you're going to have a real hard time landing your damage over time dots. Um, but what is nice is Mamook does remove all of the other annoying things, and you see more use in Mamook now that Nordak is in play a lot, giving the immunity to buff and immunity to damage. Both are considered as buff, so you're able to So you're able to strip all of that with Mamook. So very good for set a clean of debuffs. Sorry, a strip right before you apply your control debuffs. Um, Another option people forget about is Manchalo. So this mythic hero here at exclusive 2, one of his skills allow you to steal all the buff from the enemy or remove them. I believe it's remove all of them, so that's an option if you're really desperate for a stripper on your team and you don't have any of the other heroes available to you. Ben Austin is great for single target, and it really helps you lock down and kill a key target because it prevents them from getting any buffs. So with the buff block and the strip from Ben Austin, it's going to prevent them from using to pile up shields on the target you want to kill. It prevents immortality. It prevents immunity to damage and buffs from Nordak. So great way of you know targeting and locking down one key target at a time through using Ben Austin. So hopefully this series here give you a good understanding of what are the composition of heroes you can use to really set yourself up to go for the kill. And if you think about the content we have covered in part 1 and part 2 together, you actually have a very good composition for team already, because really the combination of these 5 roles fulfill the perfect combination to give you the first turn team, which you're basically trying to secure the first turn, then go for the kill. So in fact, you pick any of these one hero from one from each role, you basically got a solid PvP comp. You start with a turn meter gain, right? You could go for a control on the enemy, or a control into a turn meter, or in fact 2 turn meter. Then you want to do a strip remove from the enemy to remove any buff on the enemy. Then you do a damage amplification effect, and then your DPS goes in for the kill. So any of these combo effectively makes a good PvP team. What you don't want to see is a team with like 3 damage dealers, no amplification, no control. That's a horrible PvP setup. Or you end up with like 3 controls, but you don't have turn meter, and then you run a high risk of getting cut in between your pure control and your damage dealer. So really good way to use this concept of roles to be able to set up um, a very solid PvP team based on your own roster of heroes that you have. So hope you enjoyed this session. I'll catch you in the next video where we talk about how to aim to build a second turn team, which is around effective damage mitigation and cleanse, and then how to counter back in those scenarios, because sometimes it's probably not possible to build, say, 5 teams all with the same concept of trying to go first and go for the kill. You're going to have to tank and go second sometimes. All right, so if you like what you saw, like what you heard, please click like, subscribe, and comment below if you'd like to find out more about these more specific heroes. Glad to discuss them with you in the comment section. All right, cheers.